Hello, folks. Welcome to my home. I'm coming to you from Branson, Missouri, right in the heart of the Ozarks, in what I consider to be God's country. I believe this is God's Goshen. And this is the very first episode we're doing on a brand new platform with basically Rick from Blessed to Teach has opened up a new channel and asked me to be on it. It's called Faith and Freedom Network. And so we got a whole new audience, an audience that we haven't seen before. I've been doing videos for a couple of years now, and I've been at this since 1968, but this is a brand new platform. So what I think you always need to do when you got a new audience is you need to tell them, who is this guy? Why should I listen to him? What do I want to hear what he has to say? So I'm going to tell you the journey that I've been on since 1968, and I'm telling you, it is full of supernatural occurrences, and you're going to see too that God has had my back for my entire life, and He has had America's back, and He has had basically the entire world's back. And I think this is going to absolutely make you feel like it was preordained before you were born that all these things would happen, that this chaos would occur, but that we would win this great reset that the global financial league are talking about. Done. We're going to win. And so now I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, actually quite a lot about me, because I want hopefully to have you understand that I have been prepared since 1968 for the journey that we're on right now. So I'm going to take you back to when I think it was probably a freshman or sophomore in college, and I was between classes, and I went for a ride on my motorcycle through the Ozark Mountains. I ran around a curve, and they laid gravel down. They didn't put any signs, and I went straight, and the road went to the right, and I went over a cliff, and there was a 300-foot cliff down below, but there was a ledge. So here's what happened. My motorcycle arced into the air, and when I came conscious 4 hours later, it was the most spectacular shot I've ever seen in my life. My motorcycle was 20 foot up in the air on a pine tree with the back wheel still spinning. But I didn't go over the cliff. I hit headlong into a tree and was knocked out and was unconscious for 4 hours. I could feel my body jolt, and I felt my spirit leave. And I'm going to tell you basically what that looks like to have what they call a near-death experience. And when you have a near-death experience, it's not like when your heart stops, say, on an operating table or from a heart attack or whatever. It's basically when your spirit leaves your body. So you have a different experience. So here's what happens. Instantaneously, my body jolted. I could feel my light turn into 1,000 specks of color, and I was going through space at an incredible speed. I felt like there was a translucent tube around me. The temperature was controlled. I heard angelic music, and it was the most comforting place I've ever been into in my life. And all of a sudden, I stop immediately, and I'm looking at a fog bag, and I don't say I saw Jesus. All I saw was a silhouette. And all of a sudden, I got telepathic communication, no audio. And for 4 hours, which remember now, an hour is to a day is to an hour in the Bible. So I might have been there for who knows how long. The 4 hours may have been days and days and days. But at any rate, here's what I got. I got a download. And it's not like anything you could ever imagine. I remember it vividly to this day, 57 years later. God showed me everything that was going to happen from that moment in time all through up until now and slightly past this time. He showed me that America, remember it's 1968, America was the greatest undisputed superpower in the world. And we had patriotism. We had an honest news network. We had politicians that we believed in. It was shortly after Kennedy's assassination, but America still had faith. It had family. It had patriotism, and still had a very robust manufacturing, and all of that changed. God said over time, America is going to be degraded to it's on the very brink of financial collapse. And then I'm going to intercede. And through that hardship that the people have gone through, they're going to come to learn that they need to bend a knee to God. So everything we're seeing has just been to prepare us for what God has always planned from the inception of time, for us to bend a knee to Him, and He would release the harvest of souls. And what we would have would be the fulfillment where Jesus Christ said, "These things shall you do, and even greater." And so that's what we're coming into. We're in a period of absolute chaos. It looks like we're going to have World War III. It looks like we're going to have financial collapse. It looks just crazy like pandemonium. but we've already won. We've already won. God showed it to me, and now I'm going to tell you the specific journey that he sent me on. Oh, my nose is tickling. Sorry. So here's what happened. He said, I'm going to hold you in the cleft of the rock until the very end. You're going to spend your entire life being prepared for the moment in which I bring you out. And when I bring you out, you will tell the truth, unlike anything that the world has ever told. There's no punches to behold. The handcuffs are going to have been taken off of the news media, and you'll be able to tell the truth in people's eyes, and will set the world free. So here's my journey. He said, these are the things you need to know. When you go out, they're going to try to call you a conspiracy theorist. I'm not going to allow that. Here's what you're to do. The minute you get up off this ground, you go get yourself a Bible. I had never gone to church. I wasn't a Christian. I was just a young kid going to college having fun. So basically, I went out and bought a Bible. He said, I read that cover to cover. And before you read it, he said, I want you to sit down and I want you to pray to me. I want you to pray that I, the Lord, the living God, will show you the wisdom that I want you to have that's in this Bible. And when you finish that, I want you to read the Quran. Well, why in the world did I have to read the Quran? Because he knew that the Quran in these times was going to be basically our adversary, and we have to know our enemy. So then he had me read, unbelievable. I mean, I read my entire life. He said, you got to know anthropology, geology, sociology, psychology, climatology, on and on the list it goes. Since I got out of college, I haven't read one book in my life that wasn't nonfiction, that wasn't designed to prepare me. And I didn't even know why I was reading them. God just said, you need to learn about this and learn about that and learn about the next thing. And so what do we got? Let me give you an example right now. Look at the climate. So I had to read about climatology so I would understand what was happening with this crazy weather that's going on. And then what are they saying right now? The prophets are saying, oh, there's going to be everything that can be shaken will be shaken. So I had to learn about geology. I had to learn about tectonic plates. I had to learn about it all because at the point in time, God gave me an absolutely unique memory, almost photographic, and I have all that living water in me, and I can bring it up anywhere I want. So I'm a very unique person in terms of how God has prepared me. So basically read, but that's not enough. That's just head knowledge. I have to prepare you in other ways. And so he said, and I didn't like this. He said, you're going to change jobs about every 3 years. And he said, I'll pick each one and every one of them for you, and they'll all have a purpose that relates to the assignment that I gave you. So here we go. I'm going to give you a lineage of God appointed jobs. Every one of them was crucially important to the times that we've been going through. So I'm going through college, and I'm working in the summers building skyscrapers. I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, right across from the Arch, building a project called the Mansion House, which is a 30-story tall hotel. And I'm working with something called CAD welding. CAD welding is the non-explosive version of thermite. And what does it do? It burns at 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit. It cuts through steel like butter. So guess why God had me do that? So that I would know on 9/11, when they told us those buildings came down by those airplanes, I would know absolutely emphatically that it would control demolition. So he had me study what do you do to prepare a building for controlled demolition? So while everybody else was buying the story, I knew exactly what was going on. And I've done some detailed shows about the assassination of Kennedy, about 9/11, and about a whole bunch of other topics that God has prepared me for. So that was the first job. And what was the second job? The second job, I was still in college. I would work in summers in construction. I would work in the winters at Monsanto Chemical Company. And I didn't have a pristine job. I was just a college kid. But what did I have to learn? He gave me this inquisitive mind. When you think of Monsanto Chemical, what do you think of? GMOs. So I had to learn about GMOs and about what they do to us and about how we need to have our heirloom seeds. So another preparatory position for me so that I could do what? Warn the people when the time came. And then I'm out of college now, and God says, I want you to apply for this specific job. And I said, whoa, wait a minute, God. I don't have the credentials for that. I was going to be a teacher. That's what I studied for. I was going to be a teacher. So he said, nope, I want you to have this job. And so here's what he said. By now, you've got a pretty convincing resume. You've been in the field for a long time. You've got a really good sales background, and I want you to go apply for this job. What was it doing? Selling linear accelerators. I said, wait a minute. I repeat, I'm not qualified. So he said, have the headhunter hold your resume, go in and hand it to them when the interview starts, and you watch the hand of the Lord take over, and you'll see what happens. So I walk in, I hand them my resume, they look at it. It's not 2 minutes later, they said, Mr. Ballard, you're not qualified. And by now they're standing up and they're dismissing me, and I remain seated in the chair because God told me you're going to have this job. And I looked up at them and I said, guys, look, you don't have another interview for an hour. Give me 10 minutes to tell you why you need to hire me. And if you're not satisfied, I'll get up and leave. But here's what happened. I started telling them, oh, God always says, be prepared. I said, hey, guess what I know? I know that you fired your last salesman. He was a double E electronics engineer. And that's what you're saying you want in your job description. And then you fired the guy before that, who was a PhD physicist, because you thought you needed eggheads to sell linear accelerators. I said, no, what you need is a salesman who can sell anything to anybody. My resume says that's who I am. And so they listened to me for the full hour of the interview. They turned me away. And I kept saying, this is my job. God said, this is my job. They must have interviewed every double E electronics engineer and PhD physicist in the whole world, it seemed like, because it was 6 weeks before they called me. No second interview. They just called me and said, you know what? We're convinced that you're the guy. And so I went to work for Atomic Energy of Canada. And that was another ordained journey from God, because guess what they had in Canada? I was working out of Ottawa, Canada. They had socialized medicine. So when the Clintons started to push socialized medicine, I immediately understood that it was a trap to control. They want to control energy, and they want to control all the necessities of life. I saw people die of cancer before they ever got in to see a doctor. Now remember, this is Atomic Energy of Canada. So what did I learn about? I learned about the dangers of nuclear power plants. So I don't know if most of you know this, but if we have a meltdown, that area is contaminated for up to 1 million years. And we have now proliferated the world with nuclear power plants, some of which, like in IE California, are setting in fault zones. So it's a danger, and we're going to get new energy solutions coming out here in the next few years, and we'll eventually be able to have technologies that allow us to shut down those power plants. But what else did I learn because of that? I learned that food was a control mechanism, oil was a control mechanism, energy was a control mechanism. So the global financial elite, who control and puppet every nation in the world, want to control all the necessities of life. They want to control water. They want to control food. They want to control logistics. They want to control the media. They want to control our politicians. They want to control the banks. They want to control the corporations. So one by one, I'm learning through practical experience how a global financial elite, a demonic entity, is basically controlling the entire world. That means me, that means you, that means your kids, that means virtually everybody in this entire planet. They have a plan to control us. And what do they want to do? Just look at Georgia Guide songs. For those of you who haven't ever seen them, look it up. It's gone now. They blew it up, but it has an inscription in multiple different languages. It says, our goal is to reduce global population to 1/2 billion people. And then if that isn't enough for you, remember, now we got the new Green Deal and it's being pushed out. Well, what's that all about? You go to UN documents and you'll see that the UN also has an agenda. And what that agenda is to reduce global population to 1 billion. And what is also about it, God sent me to the book of Revelation, and he said, I'm going to show you what the UN is all about. And he said, what they want to do is basically end all borders. So basically, any nation that doesn't have a border is not sovereign. You've lost your sovereignty. If you don't control your money, you're not sovereign. If you don't control your border, you're not sovereign. So what was he getting ready to teach me? He says, now go to the UN documents, and you'll find out that they have an agenda to have 10, count it, 10 servile trading blocks. That takes you right into the book of Revelation, right into the beast system where you can't buy and can't sell. That's the system that's been trying to control us for my entire lifetime and before me, going back several hundred years, going back at least to the exception of this nation. So now I leave Atomic Energy of Canada, and I learned that lesson. And then I'm to take a job, another job I shouldn't have, with a corporation in France, CGRMF, and I'm to go Paris. That's where their corporate headquarters is. Why did God have me go there? He had me go there because something unique was happening that I would need to know in the future. And it relates to what I just talked about the beast system. Basically, coming out of World War II, Europe had been decimated. And they realized that unless they came together and united, all those nations, they were never going to be a superpower again. They would never be able to compete against the United States. And so what did I see? I saw the formation of the European Union right there, firsthand. And then I knew what it was because God had shown me what the UN was all about. And the UN basically is the enemy of the world, for those of you who don't know. And what did he do? He guided me back over to the book of Daniel, back over to the book of Revelation. And he said, I'm going to show you what the UN is, what the World Bank is, what the World Health Organization is. All of the global entities that are affiliated with the UN are all to control mankind, and basically drive us into a situation where we're nothing but debt slaves. So basically what I saw was the formation of the beast system out of the book of Revelation. And God had me spend untold amounts of time in the book of Revelation. People don't like to go there because it's complicated. And they told Daniel, close it up. Nobody will understand. Well, I'm going to take you on a little journey through the book of Revelation. I want you to see the depths to which God has taken me to prepare me. There's a lot more to this story. He has walked with me my entire life, preparing me for this moment in time when we were at a tipping point that was going to determine whether the world would be taken over by evil or whether the opportunity would arise where God would come in and save us and lead us into a period of unbelievable spiritual growth. That's what's going to happen. So basically, we look at what the UN is doing, and we look over at the book of Revelation, and what we see was there's four beasts. They're a little hard to understand, but if you read the Bible carefully, it gives you all the blueprint. So the first beast is a lion. And what do we know about the lion? Well, we know that if you go to England, their symbol on all their coat of arms is a lion. And in the beginning, before you get to the combination beast, which comes out during the tribulation period, that lion had wings on it. People say, well, America's not in the Bible. Of course it is. It absolutely is. We are the wings on the lion. But when we got our freedom through the American Revolution, the wings were taken off, and now it's just the lion. And what does the Bible tell us the purpose of the lion was? The lion was absolutely evil, but it would have dominion over most of the earth, and its language would be adopted as the world's language. So what does the UN say? The UN says English is the language of the world. You cannot be an international pilot. You cannot pilot a ship that goes around the world unless you speak English. So there's the mouthpiece for the demonic forces that want to control us. And then we see there's a bear, and that bear has ribs in its mouth. And what is that indicating? It is indicating that he is ferocious and he attacks flesh and kills many, 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 many people. So look what's happening in Russia and Ukraine right now. Look what happened in World War II. But then it says that he's a sleeping bear. He's going to go to sleep. So I predict, based on my interpretation of the Bible, that this Ukraine-Russian war is going to subside in the next few months. And when it does, Russia's going to go back to sleep. Their principal role as the ferocious beast is not going to come out till we get fully into the book of Revelation. But now we have a devourer. That's the bear. We can be looking for that. And then what's the next one? The next one's really hard to understand. There's a four-headed beast with spots. He's a leopard. And we don't have the clear indication like with Russia. Their symbols are all over the place. It's a bear. Same thing with England. It's a lion. But the Bible gives us a cipher. And it says that any time a nation loses its emperor or it collapses, if it comes back, it gets another head. So let's go to World War II, and here's what happened. So God, I need to interject here. I forgot to tell you something. One of the principal things God had me learn was not only the Bible, which is what, 70% history, but I had to learn world history as well as U.S. history, because God always gives us a foreshadow of what's coming. So every time I talk about a subject, God will bring to my spirit something that happened in the past that is the foreshadow of what we're having now, so I can tie the dots together, so I can see everything from a 60,000 foot level. So he said, I will prepare you so that you can take the complex that people cannot understand and make it simple, because of the vantage point that I give you, so that what will come out of you is living water that allows this to happen, allows me to tell a story that makes things that people cannot understand easy to understand, and that will open up the people's eyes, and the truth will set us free. So that's that's the gifting, the unique gifting that God has given me, and why he sent me on this journey. So I had to learn history, I had to read the Bible, I had to read the Quran, I had to have all these different jobs. And so now we're going down the job lineage, and there's two more branches that I have to go to tell you my story. So now I'm leaving that job, and I have a very high visual imagery because God wanted me to be an inventor. So that took me to China as soon as they opened up to where you could go to China. And I had a patent, and I went over there to get some tool and die making done. So I had an opportunity to do something very few Americans have done. This was during the Carter era, when they were intentionally ceding power from the United States of America to China. Why? Because America had become too powerful. We couldn't be controlled by the global financial elite to the degree that they wanted to control us. So that we had an idea. We're going to have a completely new economic system. We are going to basically create an economic system. So basically, here's what happened. So they put Carter in control, Carter and before him Clinton, of ceding power from the United States to China. And what they did is they put us under a trade agreement called NAFTA. Now, this is going to look backward and forward, and we're going to see a story unfold that God had planned. So we went into NAFTA, and we were already 200 years old. 200 years old. And you got any idea what our national debt was? Remember, it's 37 trillion now. It was a staggering 660 billion, not even 1 trillion. But the minute we went into NAFTA, guess what happened? It was an intentionally losing trade agreement. And where does money come from? Money comes from taking natural resources and basically building products that can be sold in trade. And that then turns into money, and the money is used to control the world. All the spheres of influence. That, what do they say? He who controls money controls the world. So what they were doing was ceding power from America, who at that time was the number one industrial power in the world, and ceding it to China. And so what happened, this is the government that they created. And if you've been living for the last 20 years, you know that what I'm about to tell you is true. With China, here's what they did. They said, we are going to create a super capitalist communist economy. What does that mean? They needed an economy that had the innovation of America, of a free society, but it had the control of a dictatorship. And so, folks, you may not realize it, but you, with your tax dollars, and you, with the money that you invested, you funded the super growth of China and the collapse of the United States. Because if you had an investment counselor, what was he doing during that period of time? He was saying, you need to have your money in high growth. Well, what was high growth at that time? High growth meant China. So you were sending your investment money to China to collapse America, and your politicians were basically in cahoots to create what? With the UN and with the other entities that were controlled by demonic forces, to basically seed money from the United States to China. And what do they want to do? If you go back in history, now I'm going back, and we're going back to where we got our freedom in the first place. We wanted to not have ourselves controlled monetarily by England. And so they were trying to put us under a central bank. And so here's a formula that you need to know. The global financial elite hit a tipping point. And when they do, they say, aha, we can do that over and over and over again. So I'm going to take you back in history again. This is another one of those foreshadows. This goes back before America was ever America. This goes back to something called the 100-Year War. And it was between France and England. And during that war, England went bankrupt. And then they went to the wealthiest family in England, to the Rothschilds, and said, we need to borrow money. And the Russians said, King, we'll loan you any amount of money you want. We just have one little stipulation. We want to print your money from now to perpetuity. That means forever. And every dollar we print is going to charge you an interest rate, and we will run your economy because we will control the money. He who controls money controls the world. So that was the inception. So when we fought the Revolutionary War, which we ostensibly won because we became the United States of America, we went bankrupt. And before Washington was even out of office, we had to go back under the central bank system of Europe. And we're now under the third central bank system. And remember what I said, the Rothschilds wanted to print the money for the nations of the world, not just America, every nation, because what they realized at that tipping point was that if they could take a nation into war, they could bankrupt it. If they could bankrupt it, they could drive it into a situation where they had to accept a central bank. And what I think it was Stalin who said, that creating a central bank is 90% of communizing a nation. So America, we're told today is a democracy. We were not established as a democracy. Our founding fathers called democracy mobocracy. Why? Because Benjamin Franklin said that the minute those least able or least willing to work understand that they can get money from the public coffers, meaning the treasury, that it was just a matter of time before the nation became bankrupt. And that's exactly the train we went down. So let's go back to the war. We basically went bankrupt and we went under the central banking system, and that's how they control us and how they've controlled every nation in the world. Until now, virtually every nation, I think, except Germany, Russia is under a central bank, meaning that they're controlled by the global financial elite, because he who controls money controls the world. So our banking system is like this. Every dollar that's printed turns into a treasury bond, and that treasury bond has what? It has a debt obligation. And so that means we can never get out of debt under the current financial system that we're under, because every dollar we print creates more debt, more debt, more debt, more debt, more debt, until we get to the point where we're at today, where there's a $37 trillion national debt, and we're paying a debt service on that of $1 trillion a year. So let's go back to the trade agreements, and I wanted you to see how all of that evolved. So now we're losing money, and all we had was a $660 billion national debt at the time that they set up NAFTA. But then it doubled and it doubled and it doubled until we get down to Bush, and then we get to Obama. And Obama created more debt for America than had been created by all the 43 presidents that followed him, or that preceded him, rather. And so what you need to know is, if you go do your history, and I've done shows on this, you'll find out that Barack Obama, we're soon to find out, I believe, is not a U.S. citizen. We're soon to find out that he's a Muslim. And if you know, remember, I had to read the Quran. I had to know what Sharia law was all about. If you are an infidel, meaning you're not a Muslim, meaning maybe you're a Christian, then you're an enemy. So we're about to find out in the coming weeks and months, and probably within this next year for sure, that Barack Obama was the enemy of the United States, put in power by the global financial elite to follow up with what they were doing. By then, we had lost our manufacturing. So now I'm going to take you back in history again, and that period that follows after every single solitary nation gets a central bank creates a situation where their manufacturing is stripped from them. And basically that means their ability to make money, because your GDP is based upon the money that is converted from trade, and that's what you use to run your entire society on. And so basically it was a repeat pattern that repeats over and over and over from nation to nation. Cause a war, put them into a central bank, bankrupt them, then control the spheres of influence, because he who controls money controls the world. So our debt just went up and up and up and up. And where does that take us? It takes us to the current times. It takes us to Donald J. Trump. It takes us to him coming in and saying, I have a really good life, but you know what? God wants me to come in and save this nation. And we were at the absolute brink of collapse. America was literally on death ground when Donald Trump came in for his first presidency. Our economy was in ruins. We had no respect without the world. And what did he do? Against unbelievable opposition, against the lies that were perpetrated about the Russia scandal, he managed to turn our economy around in no time flat. And as he was coming in making these promises from the campaign trail, Obama said, "What are you gonna do? Wave a magic wand?" And Trump said, "Yep." And here's what he did. He got us into a new trade agreement, the MCA, American MCA. And basically, we started to make money off of our trade, and our stock market went from 10,000 to 30,000. And we were on the way towards recovery. But they had that Russia scandal, and it basically kept him under a magnifying glass for 2 solid years. And we had the Durham report that cost us, $40 million and 2 impeachments and completely impeded his presidency. And what are we finding out now? Because God said there's nothing new under the sun. Nothing is hidden. He knows every hair in your head. He knows everything. So Donald Trump has all the truth. God saw to it that he does. And what are we hearing now? We're hearing Gabbard come out, and we're seeing Tulsi Gabbard say, "We got it all, folks. We know that 2016 election was stolen, and we're going to show you what they did. And we're going to show you that Hillary Clinton is responsible for concocting that whole Russiagate scandal." And then it was followed up by Obama, who said what? They asked him, "Would you like to be president for a 3rd term?" He said, "Nah. But what I like to do is call the shots from the sidelines." And so basically, we're now going to find out that Obama was whispering in Biden's ear, and he was basically committing a treason. He was making up a concocted story as well as Hillary was. And when all that comes out, you spell that treason. And why is that important? Because here's what you need to understand. When you look at the chaos that's happening in the world, you cannot look at it and say, well, it's Republicans against Democrats. It's the French against the whoever. You can't look at any given nation. They've all been taken over through the strategies that I've just told you about. And so you have to look at it through the lens of who is the global financial elite. That's the people who control the money. They control the manufacturing. That means they control the money. That means they buy and control all the spheres of influence. And so for those of you who don't know what that is, I'll see if I can call all of them up off the top of my head. I may miss one or two. But basically, they get control of the money, and then they buy the media, what Trump called the lying media. And then they buy the banks, and they buy the corporations, and they buy our school system. So what was one of the first things Trump did? Trump came in and got us out from under the federal education department and all the LGBT stuff, and basically said, "Hey, parents, I'm giving control of your education back to you." Then they got control of our churches with the 501Cs. We put a muzzle on the pastors and said, "You can't talk about anything in the Bible from your pulpit." But let's go back and get some other history. So basically, when we had the American Revolution, there was a group called the Black Robe Group. And what was it? It was our secret weapon in the war. It was guerrilla warfare. We were cutting off the supply lines of the British, which allowed us to have some super victories that we would not have had. And what was the condition? Basically, that was the pastors speaking in their congregations and telling the people, we need to stand up, we need to get our freedom. And the people said, "We'll listen to you, but we have a reason. We have something that you need to do. You need to take off your black robe. You need to go out and be a rebel with us and help and lead us." And so the Revolutionary War had a group of guerrillas who basically cut off the supply lines of the British, and they were led by our pastors. And now we have pastors who will not say anything from the pulpit. Do you see what they've done to us? And then they brainwash us with the media. Go look at what Disney, the smut that it's put out. It's basically pornography. Go listen to the newscasters. When I was growing up, we had the facts. We had news. They would just tell us what it was, and it was unabridged. And now we have the lying media that Trump talks about. So that's another branch of what they've taken over. They've taken over Hollywood. And it was Lennon who said, "If I could control Hollywood, I could control the world." And why is that? Because they control the media, and they control Hollywood. They control the politicians. They control all the sources of influence that we have, that all they have to do is tell us a little bit of truth, mingled with a little bit of a lie, mingled with a not lie, and spit it in such a way that we don't know absolutely what the truth is. And once they've done that, they can pit us against one another, and they can drive us into any kind of situation they want us to be in. That's how we get into wars, false flag events that are perpetrated to intentionally take us into a war, not for victory, but a war that will be drug out like Vietnam for decades, a war that will be drug out like 9/11. After Bush came in and announced that we were going to war, what did he say? He didn't say we're going to go in and kick some butt and we're going to be back home in no time. He said this is going to be a generational war lasting decades. So what was in common between Vietnam and between what happened after 9/11? We had rules of engagement. We had a Laos that we couldn't go into. We had situations that contained the power of our military and saw that all that was happening, just like with the tariffs, with the trade agreements, that basically we were bled out economically through war. We were bled out by having our manufacturing taken away. America was hollowed out, and we were the principal target of all the nations of the world because we were God's anointed nation. So I'm going to take you back and give you another slice of history. So back when we first set foot on this ground, it wasn't when you think it was. It was in 1607 when a trading group came to America to hunt the pelts, and the first thing they did was cut the mast off their ship and dedicated America to God. Then come the Pilgrims, and before they got off the ship, they wrote the Mayflower Complex, dedicating America to God, and God used America to evangelize to the world, and He's going to use us again. We are going to get out from under this slavery system, and we are going to be the nation that restores economic prosperity to the world, and we're going to be the nation that once again evangelizes to the world. So let's go back through some more history again. And I'm going to take you back and show you that there's never anything new under the sun. Everything's a circle, never ending, never beginning. God knows the end before the end. And I'm going to take you to the moment where America, the youngest nation in the world, became the most prosperous nation in the world. We had just come out of the Civil War, which was a war that was intended to basically split America in half because we were already getting too powerful. It didn't work. We won. We remained one nation. But we went bankrupt again. And so now what happened is we said, enough of this. We said, we're going to put tariffs on Britain, just like what Trump is doing, right? And we're going to make it so that the American people can't afford to buy those goods from Britain. Oh, let me take you to a little forward in history now. We're going to go to another nation that was a colony nation that was enslaved, just like America. That was India. And what happened in India? We fought a war to get our freedom. Not India. This is going to be kind of interesting for you to hear. They rallied around a man called Gandhi, who was a lawyer and who was a devout spiritualist. And he just sat down and he had a weapon that was insurmountable. He crossed his legs, he crossed his arms, and he said, I'm not going to eat until we get our freedom. And he rallied the people of India, and they boycotted, just like what we did, the British free goods system. And here's what that is. For those of you who don't know, Britain basically colonized the world. At one point, they owned 70% of all the gold in the world and 70+% of all the land. And they took the natural resources of all of their colonies, just stole it. And then they manufactured trade goods in sweat factories. And then they sold those goods to the nations of the world. And any nation that wasn't a colonizing nation could not compete economically. And so they took over the world nation by nation by nation by basically providing what they called free trade, where their goods were cheaper and those nations were basically economically collapsed. So they were collapsing nations with wars, and they were collapsing nations by taking their manufacturing away and breaking them economically. So basically what happened is Gandhi just sat there, and the people boycotted England, and guess what? England came and said, you can have your freedom. You're not worth it. And so now we go back to America again. I'll hopscotching about, but I'm trying to paint a picture for you that I think you need to know. And this is why you need to come and listen to me, because God has given me all this insight, all this study for a lifetime. So what happened is we said to Britain, we're not going to buy your stuff anymore. And what did that do? all of a sudden we had to innovate. What do they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. And so we innovated the Industrial Revolution. We built the Transcontinental Railroad and got access to our vast natural resources. We shared that technology instead of hoarding it like Britain did. We shared it with Europe. They were building railroads across Europe. They were going to connect every continent on the planet except Australia, which is essentially an island, and they were going to end control of Britain and the colonial nations by sea, because we were going to have railroads that came across from Europe, across the Bering Strait, that came into America. We were going to have go across Gibraltar into Africa. We were going to connect all the nations and literally strip the power away from the colonial forces. And that's why we had World War I, because they couldn't allow that to happen, because they were controlling us through trade. And so now you're getting a real dose of history. So every time anything happens today, I'm always able to dial into the event that's happening today, look at the lens of what happened in the past, and then tie all those dots together and see the trend, the pattern for how everything fits together and where they're taking us. So God has given me the ability to view the things that you're viewing, where you're viewing them at the ground in the forest where you cannot see them. He's given me the ability to see everything that happens from 60,000 feet up in the air with the insights that he's given me from the Bible, from history, from current events, from the strategic analysis ability that he's given me. We are going through one of the most amazing shifts in the world. We're going away from globalization to deglobalization. We're going away from dollarization to de-dollarization. The geopolitical structure of the world is changing in ways that you cannot even begin to imagine. Come and listen to me, and I will walk you through, with the unction of the Lord, into what's unfolding before your very eyes. And in each and every instance, I'll tie you back to the Bible. I'll tie you back to history. I will show you that God does not play with his people. We always have a foreshadow that shows us when Donald Trump does what? Tariffs. We'll see that when we came out of the Civil War, and in 34 years, America, the youngest nation in the world, at the centennial celebration, which we had a world fair where we brought in 10 million people from around the world. We made an announcement. Today, America, the youngest nation in the world, is now proud to announce that we are the most prosperous nation in the world, and we have shared our technology with every other nation in the world, and all nations are prospering because we are God's ordained nation. And as we have been prospered by God, we are helping other nations to prosper. That time is coming again, folks, because in Donald Trump's first term, he did a number of amazing things that were queued up for the future. So what did he do in this particular instance? He basically got a Supreme Court decision reversed. It's called Chevron. And what it did is it allowed the corporations to take any innovative technology that was in the field of energy, because energy controls you more than anything, or and basically say, you can't have that. We're going to shelf that patent because it represents a threat to national security. Bull bunk. It didn't. Here's what it represented a threat to. It represented a threat to the control of the financial system of the global financial elite, because if we had free energy, if we had all these technologies that are amazing that are out there, then basically they would lose control. So the Chevron deal says that some 6,000 suppressed patents are now going to be able to be renewed. They're all proven technologies. All we got to do is bring them up to scale. And so you are about to see a new industrial revolution led by the United States of America through retrieving the 6,000 patents that were innovated right here during the Industrial Revolution and were shelved. And we're going to get virtually free energy. And oh, by the way, we'll go on the climate change issue. You know, there's places out in California where they're taking pecan orchards out of production because they're basically not pecans, English walnut. They're basically grown in a bog, just like cranberries. And so basically, you're drying up our aquifers all over the world. Well, I bet you didn't know this. I bet you didn't know that there's a technology that's so simple it's not even funny. It's called a dehumidifier, or it's called a refrigerator. And what it does is it uses a simple system called condensation to pull water out of the air, out of the river of water that's in the air that God gave us. And all we have to do to make it practical is we have to have virtually free energy. And here's what's going to happen. The Lord is going to save the world from a global famine, because as these aquifers dry up, unless we do something, we're going to have desertification and we're going to have a global worldwide famine. But when we get this free energy, I'm telling you, you can go over to the bar right now today, and you can go out into one of the hottest, driest deserts in the world, and you'll see a giant mega factory, and it's sitting there, and there's all these condensers setting out in the desert. And what are they doing? They're pulling water from the air. And what are they doing with it? They're sending it over to a huge factory that's bottling water coming from the air in one of the hottest, driest places in the world. As we get these technologies, I'm just dipping into the surface here, we're going to be able to fill our aquifers. We're going to be able to have clean, fresh water right out of the atmosphere. And that's just one of the amazing technologies that are coming. So at any rate, that's your history lesson for the day. Now I'm going to take you back into the next part of what God told me. So he's had me working in all these amazing jobs. Oh, I do need to tell you about one other thing. I kind of got off track here. When I went to China to get my tool and die making done, I happened to be there during Tiananmen Square. I had been in Tiananmen Square 2 days before the massacre, and I was just inundated by a sea of young, unbelievably friendly Chinese kids calling at me. What's it like to be in America? What's it like to have freedom? Little did I know that 2 days later I would be on the Great Wall, and I would find out that those kids, probably many of those same kids, had been massacred. And I want to tell you, I was there for another 6 weeks, and it was tense, because from that day forward, every place I went, there were military with Tommy guns. The China was in a state of unbelievable tension. Here's what happened that leads us to today, from then to today, to understand that China is economically collapsing. The Chinese government, the CCP, was afraid that as a result of what they did, the backlash was going to cause basically for a coup, and the Chinese government was going to be taken out of power. So they went to the people and they said, "We got a deal for you. There's a lot of poverty in China right now. We're a third world country. If you will agree to live under communism, we will agree to give you full employment and a better standard of living." And it worked for a long time. Every time the economy started to turn down, think about the nonsense you're solving. They build another super mega project. They build another high-speed rail, by the way, which loses millions and millions of dollars a day. They'd build another dam. They'd build something. They build ghost cities that a few of them were occupied. Most of them were built to house 1 million, 2 million people. Never occupied. 70 years later, they're blowing them up because they have an absolute glut of uninhabited buildings in China. So all of that led to their demise, because what they did is the projects they built were built of necessity because they were afraid of their own people. So they would just build these projects and build them so they could keep all the people working. Well, it's not working. Basically, now they have a real estate bubble that's the biggest the world has ever seen. And now we're deglobalizing. And so they're losing their manufacturing because the world came to the realization during COVID that we couldn't basically under the influence of a primarily singular logistics system, that manufacturing had to be spread out around the entire world. Is that is going to take us to the analysis that I'm going to give you for the geopolitical shift in power that's going to happen. And we're going to go to an Asia-centric environment. But America, Donald Trump, if you'll come back and listen to me, has a plan so that America will get through this period of turmoil and come out at not the undisputed leader of the world, but still the predominant leader of the world, in a very superior position to the one we're in right now. And America will lead the world out of the mess that we're in. And that's all ordained by God. And basically, if you look back at your Bible, you'll see that there's some corollaries between Donald Trump and between the Bible. I'm trying to remember the name of the king, but basically he freed. I had it in my head a minute ago. He freed the Israelites so they could go back and build the wall. And King Cyrus. And so the Jewish people have coined a temple coin with Cyrus's profile and Donald Trump's profile. And what did Donald Trump do? He rebuilt our wall. And remember, any nation that does not have a sovereign border has no nation to be sovereign over. So there's the first incident of Donald Trump right in the Bible. And then what? Who led the Israelites out of poverty, out of slavery? David. And what have the prophets said in recent years? Donald Trump is God's ordained David, and they've tried to kill him, and it didn't work. All it did is cause him to turn to God and bend the knee and receive the Holy Spirit. And so now we have a king. What did Kim Clement said? On my mind, the greatest prophet in modern times. He said that basically Donald Trump would be president. This was forecast all the way back in 2007, and that there would be an interruption between his first and second term. And what was that all about? That was about taking the American people from the position of being utterly, completely, and absolutely brainwashed and pitted against one another to a period of 4 years where we would drip the truth, and where Donald Trump would be attacked and stand with no fear whatsoever, just like David, and would basically open the eyes of the people, and we would be able to get freedom. And it's coming, folks. He's now in his second term, and he has got a plan that if you think we made progress in the first term, you come back and keep listening to me, and you will be amazed and what was in that new big beautiful bill that he did, and the plans that he has to make America once again the greatest nation in the world, to lead the world out of chaos into a period where we have something that we haven't seen in my lifetime: parity between all nations. It was Eisenhower who said, following World War II, that is there any man, is there any woman, is there any child that does not understand that the principal cause of war in the world is disparity between nations, where one nation has plenty and another nation is starving. And so what Donald Trump is leading us through, what God is orchestrating, is a situation where the total financial system is going to collapse. We're going to get out of the fiat system that is a total perpetual debt system that is about to collapse, and we're going to go under an economic system led by God that is based upon what? Commodities. And what are they? Gold and silver and wheat and uranium and oil and any commodity that you can think of that cannot be manipulated, cannot be controlled, that is God's economic system. And what are we going to do? All of the first world nations' currencies are going to go down. All the third world nations' currencies are going to go up. We're going to meet in parity. And how is that going to happen? Because we're going to de-dollarize and de-globalize. And how is that going to happen? It's going to happen because the world has already seen through what happened with COVID that we have to have manufacturing done around the world. And the world is now seeing that the U.S. abused their power as the world's leading company and as country, and having the world's reserve currency, where what we do is we basically say to nations, look, if you don't do what America wants, we're going to sanction you. And so basically that's happening. And what we're going to do is how are all those third world countries going to have their standards of living so dramatically raised? It's real simple. They have tons of gold, diamonds, coal, uranium, every natural resource you can imagine. They have hordes and hordes of rare earth. So what's real money? It's not paper money entered into a computer by a banker that's backed by nothing. What did Joseph Stamp say? He was the president of the Bank of England during the Depression. He said, folks, you got a choice. You want to be debt slaves for the rest of your life? Just keep using that fiat currency that's created just by saying, run the printing presses, and you will be slaves for the rest of your life. We're now to the point that we understand that was true. He was telling us the truth. And now we're going to go in God's system. So under the fiat system that we're under now, think about this. They can cause inflation. They can cause deflation. They can cause stagflation, which is what they caused under Carter. They can cause stock market collapses. Oh, they can have wage suppression. Oh, they can take your money. And we came here to have freedom of speech. That's gone. We came here to own property. That's gone. Wait a minute. You say, no, I own a house. No, you don't. You think you own a house. Let me tell you the story there. When we came here to America, one of the principal things we wanted was to be able to carry arms. We wanted to be able to have freedom to vote, and we wanted to have basically the right to own land. And so our real estate system, I was one of the other jobs I guess I should bring up was that I was a real estate agent for 12 years, and I eventually had my own small real estate firm. So I know of what I'm about to speak about, and that is about real estate. So when we set up our real estate system, we were under what they called the Spanish land grant system, which was called AODO ownership. And what did that mean? That means once you buy a piece of land and you pay for it, it's yours forever. The government can never take it back. So in around 1933, the government said, we can't have that. We've got to be able to control the people by controlling yet another thing, the land. So here's what they did. They put us under a new real estate system called fee simple. And all of a sudden, you became a renter. None of you own a home. That might be a startling disclosure to you. Here's what happens. They create a depression and you lose your job. And then you can't pay your mortgage. And then the bank comes and takes your house. Or you just get a little bit behind and you can't pay your taxes. And let's say you had a $500,000 house and you had it almost paid for, like the gentleman that's sitting over here with me right now. And here's what happens. You've got $450,000 paid on that house. You're almost done, almost at the end of your mortgage. And now you've lost your job and you owe the government $5,000 in taxes. Well, you want to understand what a debauchery this is? Here's what they do. They come in and they say, we're taking your house for the $5,000 debt. Do they attempt to sell it and take their $5,000 and give you the fair market value for your house? No, they do not. They take your house for $5,000, and who ends up buying it? I can tell you firsthand because I was a real estate broker, and every time we had somebody lose their house during the COVID lockdowns, here's what happened. I go to Fannie and I go to Freddie and I say, we got an offer from a buyer. And Fannie and Freddie, because they're the ones who took the houses, said, okay, we'll take it, or no, we won't. And basically, the government just sat back and sold that house. But guess what? Most of those houses never got to the public. They were mostly picked up by insiders in the political arena or insiders in the banking arena. And so that was just a form of theft. So you don't own a home. I hate to say it. You do not own a home. As long as the government can take that home from you and orchestrate a set of circumstances that allows them to do that, you don't own a home. But guess what? Let's go back to things that are happening right now today. Florida, which is one of the leading Republican states in the country, just announced that's changing. They announced they're going to get rid of property tax. Oh, so we're moving to a new economic system in a lot of different ways, and we are eventually going to be able to say, I'm a proud American. I own my own home, because we're going to not have take rights anymore. The political system is going to change in ways you can't even imagine. The economic system is going to change in ways you can't even imagine. And God comes to me. I'm not a prophet. I want you to understand that. I'm a teacher. And God has prepared me for 57 years so that I can just regurgitate this stuff to nauseam and show you what's going on, how you've been controlled, how you've been manipulated, how we get our country back, how we became the greatest nation in the world, how we've lost it, how we're going to get it back, and how we're going to keep it. You all need to know that, and you need to understand something about revolutions. Take Cuba, for example. Almost every revolution, take the Bolshevik Revolution that ever happened in the history of the world, the people ended up worse after it. That's not going to happen here in America, because we are going to wake the people up and we are going to tell them who they really are in the Lord. And we're going to tell them what our economic system really was. It wasn't democracy, which I was talking about. It wasn't democracy. It was a grand experiment, according to Benjamin Franklin. We were the first nation in the world to ever become something called a republic. A government of the people, by the people, for the people. a government that allowed self-governance, and it had some rules in order to work. It was called the Grand Experiment. So you had to be educated. So the first thing that we did when we founded this country was we established Harvard so that the people could read, especially so they could read the Bible. So they wanted people who could read, people who were educated, people who were committed to the Lord. And then we had to have a means of communicating so that people could be informed. We had pamphleteers. That was their version of the internet, but it wasn't converted. It wasn't diluted like it is now. It was the truth. And we had pastors speaking the truth from the pulpit and talking about political issues so that we were informed. So when we went to vote, we were voting off an informed basis of information, and we were voting because we knew we were a republic, not a democracy, and a republic has responsibility. Now, when you cast your vote, you were voting for what's in the best interest of the nation, not because of what was in your best interest. So that takes us to what Franklin said. And what Franklin said is the moment, I said this a minute ago, but it's worth repeating, the moment those least willing or least able to work understand that if they can take money from the public treasuries, it's just a matter of time until the nation collapses in on itself. And so that's what we're going to learn. We're going to learn the difference between communism, between a dictatorship, between a monarchy, between a democracy, which we are not, and a republic. And a republic is the highest form of government, a government of the people, for the people, by the people, based on God's ordained laws. And that is what America is going to get back. And that's why we're not going to degrade into a revolt that is going to lead us into a worse situation, because the people's eyes are going to be open. And so I have a book called Liberty Crusade, The Fight to Save the Free World. You need to buy it, because now is the time when we have to raise an army of people. And here's what we have to do. We have to, with that 4-year period where Trump dripped that truth, we have to win over the liberals, the conservatives, all the people who have been brainwashed. They have to have their eyes open so that when we take down the Hillary Clintons, when we take down the Barack Obamas, when we take down the Schumers and all the other swamp rats that are in Washington, we can do it fairly peacefully. We want to avoid going into a civil war. We'll probably have some pandemonium. There may have to be some limited periods of martial law, but we want to be able to make this transition back to God's economy, back to God's political system, back to God, back to family, back to patriotism, restore America to where we are, that what we were ordained to be, that city on the hill that was the inspiration for the entire world. But we need to have 80, 85, 90% of the people woke. And so I'm not asking you to go out and join the military. I'm not asking you to carry a gun. I'm asking you to do one simple thing: become informed. And everything that you hear me say is this, and much, 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 much more is in that book. And you need to know it, because you need to be part of God's army so that we can stand up and save this nation. And then once we have restored our financial prosperity, we will do just what we did following the Civil War. We will innovate our way into prosperity that is unbelievable. Those 6,000 patents are going to be made available, and technology is going to change. And the global financial elite will no longer control the money system. They'll no longer control the politicians, the banks, the news media, or any of the spheres of influence. And there's going to be a transfer of wealth promised in the Bible, just like what? When the Israelites left Egypt, they didn't leave infirmed, and they didn't leave poor. And we're going to have a wealth transfer that's going to be unbelievable. And for those who you don't know, you might want to go out and check into the currencies, because there's going to be currency resets. Do your own research. I'm not a financial advisor, but I will tell you one thing. 3 years ago, God said that I'm going to make you wealthy, because I'm going to have you use the money that I give you to steward for various projects. And so I said, well, God, I don't have much of any money to invest. I don't know how I'm going to participate in the transfer of wealth. And I'm going to tell you a personal story, a true story. He comes to me at 5 o'clock in the morning. Every chapter in that book was ordained by him. And then I go do the research. He tells me what you need to know. I go and learn about it. And so what did he tell me in this regard? He told me, my people, I'm telling you to tell my people there is going to be a complete financial reset. I'm going to get you out of this fiat slavery system, and we're going to go to my system, a system based on commodities. And here's what's going to happen. Never, ever, 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 ever in the history of the world has there ever been an individual that wasn't a part of the hierarchy that was allowed to participate in the world's reserve currency. So when we go through this new system, XRP is going to be the world's new reserve currency. 3 years ago, that sounded like nonsense. It was selling for 30 cents, and I started buying, and I've been buying ever since. And now when you go in and you start to look, you hear everything that's out there is saying that we're having a complete financial reset, and that, yes, in fact, what God told me 3 years ago is looking like it's inevitable now, that the fiat system is going to collapse and that XRP is going to be used to create liquidity. And here's how it works. Right now, we have something called SWIFT, and SWIFT is how we transfer money from nation to nation around the world. And to do that, each and every bank and every country in the world has to hold currencies in the denominations of all the countries of the world. So if you want to transfer money from France to America, you have to have French francs and you have to have US dollars. And there's $127 trillion that is held out of the economy in order to facilitate those transfers. Not anymore. With XRP, here's what's going to happen. The ETFs are coming out, and there's going to be massive liquidity that's going to come in to XRP, and XRP will do something that just could never imagine doing. It can transfer trillions of dollars. Once that happens, and there's enough liquidity in XRP, it will transfer money from nation to nation, not in days, and not expensively, but for pennies. It can transfer trillions of dollars in 3 to 6 seconds. It can do smart contracts. Now, why is that important? God told me in 1968, when I had my near-death experience, that this exact economic system was going to come to set his people free. So just go do your homework, find out what XRP is. Here's what he told me. But it cannot be done today because we have to have technologies that do not exist today, because I'm going to put you on a commodity-backed system. So just use your common sense here for a second, folks. Gold's up to $3,000. Are you going to walk into a grocery store and buy a loaf of bread with a coin that's worth $3,000? I don't think so. Are you gonna pay your mortgage payment with a barge load of oil out in a super tanker out in the ocean? I don't think so. So you need a highly sophisticated technology like what we have now with AI, with artificial intelligence, with quantum computing, that can break anything in the world down to its most finitely smallest component. You could take that super tanker of oil and you say, I want to buy 1 penny worth of that oil, and you can do it. You can buy 1/100th of the Mona Lisa. You can do anything. So we are basically going into an economic system that allows us, this is important, folks, to fractionalize commodities into any denomination we want, so it can be used in global trade, and it will free up that $127 trillion that's out there. And with that becomes the end of the global financial slavery system run on fiat currency, and we go on God's economic system. All right, so enough of that. I'm going to go on to one of the other branches of what God told me. And I know this is a lot, but I'm hoping to try to let you know that everything that I say to you is the truth and nothing but the truth, as best I know it from the Lord through the sessions that he gives me. And I am here not to make money. I don't have any advertisements. I am here simply to do God's work, to tell each and every one who will listen the truth of what has happened, what is coming, and what will be. God is in control, and we are going to have the most amazing future you could ever imagine. So now you've learned my work history. You've learned that I was in different countries all over the world. And now you're going to learn that just like Donald Trump survived an assassination and probably several assassinations, God told me that when you come out to deliver this message, you're going to have to deliver the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And it's going to make a few people unhappy. So I'm going to show you that I will walk with you all the days of your life, that there will be miracles that will happen to you that you can't even begin to imagine. And I will show you that you have a guardian angel around you at all times. So here's my little history of my guardian angel or angels. I'm working in construction again. I'm 5 stories up in the air. and I hook up my safety harness and it breaks. I fall from 5 stories, but I tip up and my foot catches. I never hit the ground. Hang upside down for 45 minutes till somebody sees me and they get a crane over there and get me down. And then I'm doing the safest job on any job site you can imagine, unloading steel off a truck. But it's the 60s and it's lunchtime in St. Louis and they got mini skirts and the crane operator is 3 stories down on the ground. There's a guy sitting on the fence where you can see me and the crane operator, but he's watching the girls. And so he gives the up sign and 10 tons of steel comes pushing at me. I grab the choker, and before you know it, I'm 10 stories up in the air. The crane operator sees me, throws on the brakes, and everything was swish, swish, swish. And I almost fell from 10 stories up, but I didn't. And then this is a story that relates to 9/11. I'm working with something called CAD welding, which burns steel. It burns at 4,500 degrees and cuts steel like butter. And basically, they're building a promenade above me, 3 stories up in the air. Well, guess what? It collapsed and tons of steel comes raining down on me. And a big sheet of plywood drops on me and 2-inch diameter rods come raining down. And they poke 3 holes in that plywood, one above my head, one over here, and one over here, inches from my head. I got up when they dug all the debris up, and all I had was bruises. So go on. The stories aren't over. God said, I have your back, just like he's told Donald Trump, I have your back. And so now I'm in a car and I'm a passenger and we're going around a curve at about 70 miles an hour and an oncoming car comes and loses control and it's coming right at us. And so the driver makes a move to get out of the way, but he runs off the road and right into a concrete abutment on my side of the road. And I have enough time to jump into the back seat. And when the accident was over, I'm bruised, but I'm alive. And basically the engine ended up where I had been sitting. I'd have been crushed. I'd have been absolutely dead. And then right here, I don't know if it's a vein or an artery. I used to do a lot of wild, crazy, scary things. I used to spelunk. That's basically caving. And I had an accident in a cave and I lacerated that. And they took me out, took me to the emergency room. The emergency room. The doctor hit it with a swab. It burst. You can't put a tourniquet on that. I'd have been dead. I mean, it was so close to bursting, but God said, nope, I'm going to save you. And so I walked out of that with just stitches and was fine. And then I had a surgical operation in which they punctured an artery and the sac around my arm, around my heart filled up. And if that fills completely, you're dead. They can't even resuscitate you with shock. So basically when I woke up after a simple operation, the doctor said, you were within probably a minute of dying, period, never being able to come back. And so there were several other, but I'm going to take you to the last and final of these. There were several more. And I'm now in my middle age, and I'm on an airplane going out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. It was called the Blue Goose, later became Southwest Airlines. And I'm sitting over the wing. And on takeoff, I hear this explosion. Parts start raining down on the runway. The engine catches on fire. The captain feathers it. The fire goes out. But we're only a twin engine propeller. We've only got one engine now. And so that plane is listing at about a 20-degree angle. You go around and we're jettisoning all our fuel. All the trucks are out. And basically they're thinking, oh, my God, this plane is done. The people are all going to get killed. Pandemonium breaks out. People crying, people praying. It was unbelievable. God said, you ready to graduate? I said, I think so. He said, stand up and do what I tell you. I stood up, I undid my seatbelt, and I screamed at the top of my lungs, not one person on this plane is going to have one hair on their head harmed. He said, I have everything under control. And that pilot was amazing. We came down, and our wing was just about to touch the ground, and at the last second, he flipped it up. We bounced down that runway, and we got off, and not one person was harmed. Everybody was applauding because they knew they had been part of a supernatural event from God. And I could go on for hours of hours. I have had so many accidents, so many things that where the devil tried to take me out. And every single solitary time, there was my guardian angel to see to it that I walked away with nothing more than a few bruises. So I'm a man who has walked a journey with God, where I've studied all my life, where I've had every job that I ever had ordained by God, where I've traveled all over the world, being at places at crucial times, basically being in Europe, the formation of the European Union, being in Canada when they first had socialized medicine, being in China when they had Tiananmen Square. What does that do? That gives me the ability to do just exactly what God said. I have the ability to stand and look at anything that happens today from a 60,000-foot view, put the pieces together, and tell God's people the truth, the whole truth, and not the truth, so it can set your eyes free, so you can see the truth of what's been done to us. So I ask you, don't come and watch me because I'm a man. Come and watch me. Come to this channel and follow me and subscribe, because what you're going to get is you're going to get a lifetime worth of experience where I was walking hand in hand with the Lord, and he was preparing me for this exact time, the time when basically the world would be at a tipping point, and God was not going to show me that he was going to save me, but God was going to show you that he was going to save all of you. We have a destiny. We are about to move out from under the control of a demonic global financial elite and move into a period where God is the one. He's going to free us, and he's going to use America to lead the world into a period of revival, the likes of which we've never seen. Christ said the time will come when what? When you will do everything I've done and even more. You will do even greater miracles than I have done. We're coming into a period of absolute spiritual enlightenment, the likes of which you can't see. And we're going to come into a period where we cannot be controlled by money, and where basically we finally get to understand that we are all God's children, and he has the best interest of all of us. He's a God who is all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving, all-forgiving, and he is the one who has orchestrated everything that I've told you, and he is the one that has your destiny in his hands, and there's not a one of you here that isn't here. If you will just bend the knee, God will show you your footsteps. So please, I ask you, subscribe and join and follow me as we go through this next year or so, because it's going to be the most amazing story you have ever seen. So with that, I think you have a bit of an understanding of what I bring to the table, of my story, of the history that I have, of my knowledge of the Bible, of everything that God has put in me to pour out to you. We are going to have the greatest future you could ever possibly imagine. The Lord is at the door to set the captives free, not just like Egypt, but the entire world. So Canada, you're controlled by a government that's going to collapse. They're going to get your freedom back. Australia, you're controlled by a government. Your government is going to collapse. China, you're controlled. Your government's going to collapse. America, you're controlled. Your government's going to collapse. One by one, he is going to come through, and nations, he brings up nations, and he can make those nations fall. We're going to see some of the most powerful nations in the world utterly, completely, and absolutely collapse, and their form of governments collapse, and we are going to see them rise in the Lord, and we are going to see supernatural events that are going to make the people understand. I don't care what Donald Trump does. I don't care what any other leader in the world does. This is all orchestrated by God, and God alone will get the glory for what he is doing, and we are going to have the most amazing future you could possibly imagine. And this was all shown to me in 1968 during 4 hours, once I lay unconscious on the ground and my spirit was in heaven. This is absolutely, I swear to you, with everything in my life, this is the story, the journey that God has prepared me for. And he said, you will not come out until the last second, until you hear a salt and pepper, till the world is on the tipping point of collapse. And then I will bring you out, and I will bring out hundreds, thousands, as many as it takes, in order to basically be able to tell the world what they need to know, so that we can walk into, this has all been about the harvest of souls, about taking America, taking the world into a new spiritual revolution where we will basically see more miracles and signs and wonders happen in this period that even happened when Christ was on the earth. So please join me. And there's hundreds of other people out there, thousands of other people with similar messages. We each have a unique calling, but basically he has called an army of people to basically wake up the people, to pull the scales of deception off their eyes so that we can stand. You ready for this? Stand united, understanding who our enemy is, standing one nation under God. No, the world united, arm in arm, free from all the subterfuge that's been given on us, all the control and all the miraculous, the control that's been done, and we can walk into a future where we are guided day by day, moment by moment, by the Holy Spirit. So with that, I thank you. I know this has been a long story, but I wanted you to walk away understanding God's in control. So bless you all.